genres. But yeah, right now we're going to go into Bad Breeding's latest album, Exiled. Bad Breeding, Stevenage, UK hardcore punk group.
Anarcho-punk as well.
Anarcho-punk, which means they're from Antarctica.
No. So anarcho-punk is a genre that kind of came about in the late 70s and the 80s. It kind of developed a little bit out of hardcore, but they're like still like two separate like branches. And while the obvious like things like, oh, they're about anarchy, they're bands that promote the actual politics of anarchy and not just like anarchy as like a trigger thing. Like it was like, oh, anarchy, I'm so edgy. It's like actually like, no, anarchy is like a legitimate political like ideal that you can follow. Notable bands are like Crass and Conflict and Poison Girls. They clearly take a lot of their inspiration from Conflict and Crass, especially their album artwork. Their album artwork is just straight Crass like style.
Their album art's straight ass.
Fuck you.
I really like their album art. Their album art on this is cool because it has the cutouts.
Yeah.
And I love me some cutouts.
It's the heavy black and white, high contrast, or little logo, and
yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah.
But going over this, they're part of One Little Indian Records, and I want you to read something because I think it kind of explains the album. It's really long, but don't read it as like pause and take breaks, like try to just get through it.
Just read the whole thing?
Yeah, we'll talk about it afterwards. This is taken from the Exiled sleeve, so the inner sleeve of the record.
Which I'm still waiting on mine to show up.
You ordered it?
Yeah, I ordered it in their second album because I liked their second album more than this one, personally. But I really like the band in general. And the company that I'm ordering it from, like, yeah, so we're on break until like mid-August. I was like, fuck! So it's going to be like September before it arrives. It can be hard at times to keep your hate pure. The constant intentional friction of the media, of the culture, and of our politics sands away at its edges until it can feel too tiring to make them sharp again. Every facet of our reality is designed to wear us down. Political values that are natural to despise are presented as facts of life rather than ideology. And in the face of the seeming inevitability of these values, continuing lethargy sets in. But as the late Mark Fisher wrote, emancipatory politics must always destroy the appearance of a natural order, must reveal what is presented as necessary and inevitable to be a mere contingency, just as it must make what was previously deemed to be impossible seem attainable. And for that to happen, you need to hate. Hate is the only energy that can sustain you in increasingly brutal times. I paraphrase the polemicist Alexander Cockburn to start this piece. He used to ask interns at The Nation magazine, how pure is your hate? On their first day to test their moral and commitment to the good fight. One such intern was former labor leader Ed Miliband, who answered that he did not hate anyone. Proof, if any more, was needed of the truth of my initial statement. So don't let that visceral feeling in your gut get dampened by patronizing sneers or dismissive intellectualism. You don't need a degree in political philosophy to know that it's fundamentally abhorrent for 4.1 million children to be living in poverty in the fifth most developed economy on Earth. You'll need to know the GDP of the UK and its attendant effect on economic growth to know that homelessness increasing by 60% since 2010 is symptomatic of a rotten, morally bankrupt society. I need water.
Where violence and suffering is inflicted on the most vulnerable as a matter of ideological course, it is clear that the disconnect between reality of 1.3 million families using emergency food banks in last year and the government claiming to be for the just managing is laughable and somewhat scary in its big-eyed delusion.
As a recent UN report on poverty in the UK put, the government has remained determinedly in a state of denial. Just because statements are issued from behind a lectern doesn't make them any more valid than the patronizing babble of a Davos attendee philanthropist monologuing about fostering opportunity and sparking innovation whilst hoarding capital in offshore bank accounts. This isn't normal. The UK government is systemically inflicting deep injustice on those who should be receiving the most support, and it's getting worse. The natural order that we're embroiled in is a farce and wasn't even in place 2 decades ago in many cases. Screams of derision are the valid response for anyone who says otherwise. Austerity has wrought unnecessary misery. We know this, we feel it, we see it happening to ourselves and to our communities. It is often portrayed that there is a complex political reality or set of circumstances that make this necessary or inevitable, and the patrician outriders that often deliver this message can knock fragile self-belief. But here's the thing, there is no complex political reality, no set of circumstances that do or could ever make the actions of the ruling class in the UK necessary or inevitable. It is simply their own ironclad entitlement and lust for power and capital. They are clear enemies for us to face in the coming years of dwindling resources and accelerated ecological catastrophe. That fact will become increasingly stark as the gilded class of the super wealthy are forced to become more transparent and authoritarian in their attempts to dominate. Along with a likely surge in more violent and direct methods to achieve these ends, there will be continued efforts to obfuscate?
Yeah,
I hope so. The truth of the reality we experience and know to be unjust in order to dilute and undermine the anger that is already growing and to allow self-doubt to creep in. Guard against it in the most productive way possible. Keep your hate pure.
Which I think is the main theme of this record. Is
go ahead and put this jacket on.
I like the idea of you don't need a political. Oh hey, Dad just walked in. You don't need a political degree to talk about politics and to know things are just wrong. And I think that just kind of describes punk music in general.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of just describes his album. And it's a loud 30-minute punk record. It's hardcore punk record.
Hardcore, anarcho-punk, crass inspired. That's what this band logo is.
Yeah. And I think what I can really say about it is I think my major critique is that the vocal mixing is a little low, so it's very hard to hear anything that is being said.
Yeah, when I said that I like their second album more, that's actually one of the main reasons. Is on their second album, I think vocally the vocalist was a little more creative, was doing a little more varied things, but also it was better mixed. The vocals were to where you could actually hear the vocals, and make them out and understand.
But also, I think they actually kind of work as a weird ass instrument in this, because he's just another part of the set piece at that point. Which doesn't mean just because we can't hear what he's saying, we can still hear him, and he still does a very good job. The vocalist, what's his name, Christopher Dodd. He does a pretty good job throughout this entire thing, even though I can't make out what it's saying because of the mixing.
It still adds to the overall sound.
He's added to the overall sound. It's just another guitar, he's another bass, but the overall sound to this is very eclectic, very loud, distorted, hardcore punk album. Runs about 30 minutes. But it doesn't feel that way, which is nice, because usually when we have these long mixes that really don't take any breaks, it feels that way. But this one,
break with interlude,
a 1 minute break that isn't that
right
long,
at the very end.
At the very end, but it doesn't hold up. Doesn't keep you going. It just keeps going and going and going and going in this loud, distorted manner. And I found it to be just a nice mix of hardcore punk, but I feel like the themes of it, while they do resonate with me, just with the sound alone and some of the ideas that I am able to work out, like being exiled from the world or being exiled, feeling that this entire world is to shame and whose cause is everyone fighting for, you just needing to take a break and just being isolated in this giant ass sea, feeling like you're almost alone. I'm able to make out themes. I'm able to make out ideas. I'm able to really enjoy the sound of everything and the distortedness and the policy and the kind of the anarchy that is coming from the sound that I really am able to appreciate. Just the main thing is I'm just not able to hear the vocals, and if you're saying stuff, I really want to hear it.
Yeah, when the message is clearly important to you, as this giant essay they put in their sleeve would suggest that it is important that you can hear and make out the things that you're saying. I do really enjoy this album a lot. I'd compare it to the earlier album of Show Me the Body, not in terms of sound, but in terms of impact and energy. Yeah, they're both two highly energized, highly aggressive punk albums that can maintain their aggression pretty well throughout their runtime.
I like the idea that you brought up the recent Show Me the Body record, because I feel like that one's a short little rush, but that one also mixes up its sound. This one doesn't mix up its sound, but is able to be very potent throughout. So it's a different style and contrast, and what works for you a little bit more. I think this one, I don't like this as a Show Me the Body record that much, but I do think it does its own things, very different things, very well.
I like that it's more throwback than Show Me the Body. Show Me the Body is like the clear, like this is how punk is progressing, whereas this is more of a, this is still taking a lot of its cues from the 80s and late 70s punk.
Yeah, the fact that it is able to maintain this speed, this rush, this pace throughout the entire thing is tremendous. And we get this 1 minute distorted break for the interlude, and then we get back into the torture reality of everything, the longest track on the album, which is probably one of the most distorted and harsh tracks on the album.
Probably my favorite song on the album. I think it's a very solid closer.
Yeah.
For what everything was leading up to.
And I think for the most part, everything in this album evens out, even though we can't hear the mixing of the vocals, which it's weird that that's the case, because I feel like any other album this would kill it, because this reminds me of like Cherry Bomb when Tyler was so low in the mix you couldn't make out what he was saying a lot of the times. But I feel like for this one it kind of works out, because in the end everyone's kind of like even.
Yeah, and the vocals just feel like another part of the soundscape, not something that's like we're missing as much as
which
you do in
is
Cherry Bomb.
weird, because like there's the whole entire doctrine, so there's themes, but you're able to make them out through the titles alone or just through the hooks that are being presented that you can hear, or the little bits you're able to hear throughout. So it's weird. This is one of the weird occasions where I feel like I should rate this lower, but I also I enjoyed it. I thought it was one of the more tolerable things I've heard in a little while. Yeah. Oh, my phone went off. So my dad came in, now my phone went off. Everything.
You're just fucking everything up, Vincent.
Keep in mind that all scores are futile and meaningless. Right now I'm feeling a 7 on this.
I'm feeling an 8. I'm feeling an 8.
Do you think it's an essential project?
I think it's essential, yeah.
Okay.
It's definitely essential punk for like 2019. If you want to listen to a good punk album in 2019, listen to this.
Okay.